This daily drawing exercise is a quick sketch of the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Now, for a quick daily exercise, it is a possibly more complex subject, which means what we're looking at is a quick drawing of it rather than a laboured masterpiece. We're trying to capture something of it. So I start with the column that's closest to us, and then I use that to try and determine my scale. Now, when I push these columns to the left, I'm in my reference looking to see what's in between the columns, because that helps me to space the columns adequately. I make a few marks to indicate where further back columns that we can still see are, just to help me position. And so now I'm doing the entablature and the pediment over this. You're watching this slightly more than double speed. So it took me about 30 minutes to do in real time, which really was a bit long for these videos, but once I'd started, well, I was committed to it. But you could easily draw this in a slightly more gestural style than I managed to, and draw it in less time. Although I did spend a fair bit of time drawing all these people in the front, because they had to be positioned before I could do the base of this end of the structure. So it's important to not rush subjects that overlap. You'll see that I deliberately didn't bring the columns right down to ground level. I left room to draw the people, and I drew one person ahead of the others so that I could just work out the position. So just get these people finished. And now I can add these elements behind the front colonnade on the end here that I was using to help me space. And I've decided to try with my hatching, vertical hatching for the non-column darkness areas, and horizontal hatching for the columns, the row of columns that sits back behind this one. I'm still not sure how I feel about it, or whether I should have used the same for everything behind those first columns, but possibly it works okay enough. You can tell me what you think in the comments. I thought possibly the columns may have got lost if I used vertical hatching for everything, or even the same hatching in any direction for all of the darkness. And so now I put in this tree, which I made a slight misjudgment in not realizing that I needed to put that tree in before I drew as much as that leftmost column. But never mind, it's a quick sketch. I'm not going to worry about it too much. So then just working out what happens past the end of that section. And now I think I'll get the front wall of this wing of the gate done. And again, there's a few more people to add, a few details that overlap in the front to draw before I add these ones. Now, these are just 4 columns. I'm not sure why I didn't take the columns up more, and that would have avoided these nasty little lines that just overlap into blotches up the top of the row of columns there. So more foreground details. So now I need to establish the gate, the main part of the gate, the central colonnade, and I align the corners of the end entablature with the structure I've already drawn. And then I have a look to see, now, does this actually work? Because sometimes we haven't drawn exactly, and we need to sort of massage the alignment just a little bit so that it's going to look better in our drawing, even if it's slightly less true to the reference. And so I do that. I position the 2 columns, and then I get the section between those 2 columns worked out. That gives me the uppermost entablature, which has quite large overhanging corners, or at least it overhangs quite some distance. So they're the sorts of details it's good to get. I put these trip ditches on, and again, just hinting at the architectural detail. I really am still just drawing the effect rather than the precision of the details. So now we have this rather odd doorway that comes out of the side of the building. So I can only assume that the earlier version of the Brandenburg Gate before the war had maybe something there. I don't know, maybe it's always been there, but it does look a bit odd. So now I get the angle of the entablature for the main portion of the gate. I do a very wobbly flagpole there. And now I'm just looking at these columns. Now there is a gap between the two center columns, so we have a gap where there looks as though there's basically no column. But with the flagpole there, it kind of makes that not so obvious a difference anyway. So now working along the top of the entablature, I decided to do some quick gestural indication of the fluting on these columns, these massive Doric columns. Bit of hatching to indicate the shadow between the two flanking central columns. So now I have the platform that the Victory statue and the quadriga, the four horses and the chariot, stand on. And this is where I make probably my most noticeable blunder in the drawing. I'm drawing this with a 0.2mm pen, which I think worked well. I wanted something dark enough to get those shadows in the front, and that's why I chose the 0.2, but I should have switched when I did the statue to the 0.1, because when I began to draw the statue, it was just too thick. And what happens, and this happened to me, when we draw something with a pen that's too thick, is we tend to draw it larger than we should draw it, because that's still the minimum size we can draw the detail we're trying to draw with that size pen. And it just all magically appeared then, because I turned the camera off to just film in two sections and forgot to turn it back on for a few minutes. And as you can see, my statue is way too big. And then as I realized it was becoming too large, that flustered me enough that I then got some other proportions wrong. So I do wish I'd switched to a 0.1 just for that statue, just for the quadriga. Never mind. This is why we do daily drawing exercises, so we learn these lessons on a smaller, faster, less important piece of work. So I've basically finished the actual Brandenburg Gate now, and so I'm just doing some of the elements around it. So I do like these overhanging trees where they come into the corners. They often give a sense of foreground in an unexpected place, and as is the case here, it helps to frame a fairly empty upper section of the drawing. And similarly, I've got a framing building on the left, which I think has a nice counterbalance to the tree on the upper right in terms of framing. And we'll just work on this corner for a moment and put a little more hatching, very quick gestural hatching in that tree. And there's a few more details in the architecture that we can see behind, and then we have the corresponding grey building on the right hand side, and then we're going to be done with the Brandenburg Gate. Look, for a relatively quick sketch for the amount of detail that we have here, yeah, I think it'll do. I did sit under some shady trees on a 30+ degree day in Berlin once, and I drew this from a more front-on position. So I have fond memories of sitting in front of the Brandenburg Gate and drawing it. It probably was a smaller drawing than this even. It was in an A5 sketchbook. And a few more foreground elements just to make the gate sit backwards a bit. If we have some closer things, it gives the effect of the rest of the picture moving back. So it can be a very helpful thing, as long as we don't make them too dark or conspicuous that they attract all the attention of our main subject. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, what do you think? Not my best statue, that's for sure, but I think this is a good exercise for a quick sketch. Might take you a little bit more than some of them, but why not give it a go? And you'll find it on my channel community page, of course, the reference photo for this. But look, whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.